Welcome to At the Market, a look ahead at Chicago area real estate. Brought to you by At Properties, the #1 brokerage firm in the region. Welcome back to At the Market. I'm Peter Olesker with At Properties, and we've got a lot to talk about. We last visited in the dog days of summer when the market was chugging along with surprising energy, and it was apparent that the pandemic had sparked some interesting real estate trends. Well, now we're going to take a closer look at some of those trends and how they might be playing out in a few locations around Chicago. We're also going to get our experts' thoughts on what the future holds. So let's meet those experts. As usual, we have At Properties co-founders, Mike Golden and Thad Wong, and we're also joined by Grace Kaage, Vice President of Brokerage Services and Managing Broker in our new Gold Coast office. Welcome, everyone. We've got Grace here today for a very specific reason, other than the fact that Grace literally grew up in the industry and has a ton of expertise. But while you are in the company of 3 Gen Xers, you are also a millennial, Grace. And at the very beginning of the year, Mike and Thad made the prediction that the 2020s would be the decade of the millennial home buyer. And that decade really has started fast and furious. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal in August that said that millennials now account for more than half of all new home loans. And I think we're going to see that number bump up even more in 2020. So, Grace, I will ask you, why has your generation stepped up to the plate in such a big way in 2020?
First of all, it's so nice to hear millennials being credited for home ownership. I feel like for so many years we were getting a hard time with everybody leasing for so long. But Peter, I think it's a couple of different factors, right? I think millennials are coming of age, and so they're starting to have families. They need more space. And I also think, millennials, because they came of age during the recession, there was a lot of hesitancy towards home ownership for a little while. And they were kind of known as that group who likes to Airbnb and WeWork and, almost like a nomadic lifestyle. But everything that's happened this year in 2020 has really made people understand that home ownership is more important than ever. And I think that they're feeling like it's their time. Interest rates are low. Why not jump into the market now?
Yeah. Mike, I want to ask you, how much of this do you think is COVID driven, and how much of it do you think is just simple demographics? This is such a big generation.
I mean, I definitely think you could attribute it to both. But when you look at the millennial generation, they are larger than any other living generation, even the baby boomers. So to Grace's point, a lot of them are coming of age. They may have delayed home buying because they pushed off having kids, or they focused on their career, or they focused on life experiences before getting on their career. So I think we're seeing a shift because they're coming into the phase of life where home ownership and stability is much more meaningful than it was beforehand. And then to some extent, I think COVID definitely accelerated people's decisions to buy. Some of them may have been thinking about it for a little while, and they decided to make the jump with the interest rates being low, and maybe after living in that 500 square foot Cracker Jack apartment or in their parents' basement, they realized they wanted something a little bit more, with a little more space and a little more stability.
And I think as jobs come back, as there's movement back into the city, they're going to fuel this growth over the next 10 years. So, when you look at our industry and you look at the positive aspects of COVID, if you want to look at them positively, this is what it is. People wanting a home, focusing on a home. This will do a tremendous amount for our community on home pricing, and millennials will be driving it every step of the way.
All right. Well, we wanted to look at this trend of millennial home buying through the lens of a few different neighborhoods. And we want to kick it off with Westtown. Now, we've all been reading the headlines. Home buyers are looking for single-family homes, not condos. Home buyers are looking to move to the suburbs. They don't want to be in the city. But in Westtown, which includes Ukrainian Village, Wicker Park, River West, and Noble Square, you're actually seeing an increase in condominium sales. Condo sales are up about 8.5% year over year. So, Grace, what gives?
Here, I'm so glad you asked about this, because I feel right now the headlines are all about, the suburbs and downtown. But Westtown has been a little bit overlooked, and there's big news here. So with an increase in condo purchases, I think that's a reflection of millennials. I want to read you some numbers here. So for millennials who have been leasing, I think they're noticing that for $2,400 a month, if they're comfortable with that payment and credit, they would qualify for a $500,000 home. You follow? And now for a $3,400 a month rental payment, if they're comfortable with that and they have good credit, they're qualifying for a $700,000 home. So I think right there, that's our explanation for the increase in condo sales in markets like Westtown, because it's a really happy medium, right? They're getting a little bit more space, but they're still close to transportation, bars, nightlife, all of that. So that's really exciting.
Sure. So basically for the amount of rent that you would pay on a really nice 1-bedroom apartment, you could buy a 2-bedroom condo. For the amount of rent that you would pay on a really nice 2-bedroom apartment, you could afford a 3-bedroom condo or perhaps even a small single-family home.
Yes, absolutely. And at the end of the day, then you haven't been throwing your rent out the window, paying somebody else's mortgage. On top of all of this, you've also built equity into your home as well. So with interest rates being what they are, anybody who's renting right now, if you're watching this, this is such a great time to buy. So I can't stress that enough.
I think one of the things attributing also to Westtown condo sales booming is that there's less of a focus on the Gold Coast and River North in condos. And so when people are buying, they like the lack of density. They like the benefits of commercial and transportation without having so many people on top of each other. Okay,
well, so condo sales are up in Westtown, which seems a little counterintuitive, but also single-family home sales happen to be down. And, again, we look at the headlines and we see that everybody wants to buy single-family homes. So what's going on with single-family homes in Westtown? Is it an inventory thing, or is it a buyer preference thing, or what's happening there? Mike?
I think it's very, very difficult to look at things in such a kind of micro moment in time. I think you have to look at the market a little bit more broadly. And then you have to then really have a nuanced understanding of the micro market that you're looking in. You have to look at pricing, demand, and not what's going on over the course of 1 month or 2 months, but what the general trends are. And, not that we want to make this a commercial for working with a real estate broker, but the reality is you need a consultant. You need someone who can help you understand the data and really understand what the true trends are, as opposed to what you're necessarily reading in a headline, because we'll see 2 headlines that completely contradict themselves in 2 days in the news lately about the real estate world. So it is really important to, I think, have some help kind of rooting through the data and understanding what's going on.
Well, okay, that's a great segue. I do want to talk about pricing for a minute. Cranes recently came out with this piece about the UBS Global Cities Price Index, in which Chicago was identified as the most undervalued housing market among 25 major global cities. A couple of weeks before that, Illinois Association of Realtors released its August data, which showed double-digit year-over-year price increases for both the city of Chicago and the 9-county metro region. So I want to ask you, how do we reconcile those 2 conflicting pieces of data? What's happening with pricing?
Well, unfortunately, the comparison that the association came up with is ridiculous, because picking August after COVID versus August of pre-COVID and comparing them is completely and totally irrelevant. So what is relevant is the fact that we have the most affordable city effectively in the world that has the components of what make a great city great. So I actually look at this as an asset. Some people might want to say, hey, who wants to be on the bottom of that on the list? But I view our city as incredibly affordable, which I think is going to fuel a lot of its growth and a lot of its interest. And the bottom line is that you can get a heck of a lot more bang for your buck in Chicago than you can in the other great cities in the country, whether it's San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York City. In Chicago, you get significantly more for your buck. So I am very bullish on Chicago because of that. And I like the fact that we have incredibly affordable housing.
Mike, what do you make of the pricing data, whether it's Case-Shiller or Illinois Association of Realtors?
Well, I mean, I completely agree with a lot of Thad's analysis by picking a moment in time. But, the reality is Chicago is an incredible value city. And I think actually that bodes really well for our future, because it's an opportunity for people to come in and create some value for themselves. If you look at some of these other markets where you're talking about housing bubbles and pricing bubbles, those are the ones that are scarier to invest in. But overall, Chicago is an incredibly undervalued market. And we're now hearing about that in national news. This is a great time to be buying, especially in the city of Chicago right now. And everyone's going to look back a couple of years from now and say, wow, what a great value this real estate was. We're seeing the market firm up. We're definitely seeing the amount of supply come down, because we've had a lot of pent-up supply. But if you look back in 2009, 2010, anything you bought then was a good deal. We're going to look back a couple of years from now, and I think look at Chicago in the same way as our city continues to evolve.
Grace, your boots on the ground. Do you think we're at an inflection point for pricing in our market?
Yeah, I really do. I completely agree with what Mike was saying. I know a lot of agents who have investors who are really buying up a ton of property right now in the Gold Coast and River North and in the Loop, because those are neighborhoods that there are deals to be had and they're going to be coming back. There's no way that they won't. So right now it's a little bit of a buyer's market right there. Whereas if you go into some of the surrounding neighborhoods and certainly off into the suburbs, then we start to see it become more of a seller's market.
Well, I think also when you know what happens after a booming stock market, their stock market's been growing every year for a decade. So there's going to be wealth transference happening where parents are helping their children with down payments on homes. And now with COVID, the focus for the next decade is going to be on your home. How do you get a larger home? How do you get a yard? You know, the joy of home. And I'm a big believer that the percentage of your income, which will be applied towards housing, which has been internationally very low in America, that's going to start to come up, not quite to Europe, but I think that we'll see over 40% of income being directed towards housing costs.
Well, and that's really interesting too, that I just want to touch on quickly, because some of my agents that I've been talking to have clients who are millennials who have been renting for such a long time that they have saved up a significant amount for their down payment. So they're first-time home buyers, but their purchase is almost entry-level luxury. So it is a very interesting market, and I think that's going to continue over the next 5 years.
Yeah, millennials, some of them skipped. They skipped the entry-level condo. They waited, they rented potentially until they wanted to start a family, and they're starting with 2 and 3 bedroom condos or entry-level single-family homes. That's true.
Well, let's talk about the suburbs for a second. And you mentioned entry-level luxury. I want to talk about two neighboring towns. One kind of does hit that entry-level luxury mark, and the other one is more entry-level, and that's Naperville and Plainfield. And one of the really incredible things when we look at these two markets, and Mike, you alluded to it earlier with supply, is there really just isn't a lot of inventory. It seems like it's been largely gobbled up. So in Naperville, we've got 4 straight months of month supply of inventory under 2. Right next door in Plainfield, we're looking at an even tighter market. And Grace, I want to ask you, do these numbers surprise you at all? Seeing month supply of inventory at 1.5, 2 months.
Not at all. I mean, Naperville is such an exciting place to be buying property right now. It's super exciting because it's tailor-made for this environment, right? So we have people who are looking to get more space. They want to be in something that still feels like a city. Naperville is its own city. It's got great restaurants, great bars, some of the best schools in the entire state. So when you're looking to get a great value, I think you're heading to Naperville.
Average price in Naperville is up about 6.3% year to date versus 2019. Does that explain a lot of what you're seeing in Plainfield, pushing buyers, into a more affordable market? Mike?
I think without a doubt, partially. Obviously, Naperville's been a hot market for a long time. And as prices go up and some people get a little priced out, they'll look for other alternatives that are close by. But Plainfield's a great market by its own right, and a great village. And it's very, very affordable. So I think it's a combination of just general demand for that area. And then obviously some push up demand from Naperville's pricing inching up. Yeah,
in Plainfield, average home price is a little under $300,000. So that's very affordable. If you've got $400,000, even $500,000 to spend, you're looking at the top of that market in a very, very nice home. And we've seen sales in Plainfield up over 11%, just on a unit basis year over year. So that market is really rocking. Thad, how much of that traditional, fall market thought process applies this year? Are buyers in the market in the fall because they have to be in the market, or are they in the market this fall because they want to be in the market?
Well, I think it's a good question, but I would say both. I think seasonality has been completely switched. The summer was our spring market, and our fall will be our summer market. But I do think we're dealing with a little bit of a phenomenon because of the low inventory. A number of buyers have not been able to capture the house, and they lost out on multiple offer situations. Those are good buyers that have interested in your home, because those are buyers that don't want to lose again and are usually willing to have tighter terms, shorter contingencies, and oftentimes willing to pay a bit more. So I would say this fall, because of low inventory and the psychology behind the buyers still remaining, it's a great time to list your home.
I couldn't agree more. I think, we've always joke here, but if your house is not on the market, guess what you can't do? You can't sell it. So if you put it on the market, you have an opportunity to sell it, and you're doing it at a time where we have almost historically low inventory levels. It's a great time to be selling right now.
Well, let's shift gears here. And we've been looking at some of the satellite markets outside of Illinois this year. And we've seen strong activity in the second home markets of Harbor Country, Southeast Wisconsin, and Northwest Indiana. But a lot of the focus here is lake towns. And we wanted to know what's happening off the lake, towns that aren't necessarily vacation home spots. Northwest Indiana, in particular, is one area that's generating a lot of buzz. And we took a look at 3 towns in Northwest Indiana: Cherville, St. John's, and Crown Point. And we found that year-over-year unit volume is up almost 10%. And average sales price is tracking about 6% year-over-year. Thad, I want to ask you, what's going on in these markets? Why are we seeing such strong activity? Is this a tax play? Is it Illinois buyers that are trying to cross the border to get lower taxes, or is there just more interest in Indiana?
All of the above. And we'll be opening up a large office in Cherville in about 90 days. So you have a lot of families and individuals that live in the southwest suburbs that are crossing over the border to lower their cost of living, to have lower taxes. Number 2, the communities that have established in St. John and Cherville and Crown Point over the last decade have become more vibrant, having downtowns that are thriving with not just franchises, but local restaurants with good food. Schools have always been good. And then going back to it, it's a lower cost of living. So I think you're going to continue to see people that are lowering their fixed costs and taking a little bit added time for their transportation to the city, or people working from home. But I don't think it's a trend that's going to slow down at all. I think those towns have established themselves and they're very, very stable from a pricing perspective.
Grace, what are your thoughts there? It seems like small town living is very much in vogue right now. I mean, you've got the city, you've got the suburbs, and then you've got small towns, and we've got these small towns right over the border.
I mean, how do I say it any better than Thad just said it? I completely agree. I think, there are so many advantages to small town living, from the tax benefits you get to just a little bit of a different lifestyle. I was just joking with friends, we're seeing a boom in people who are building chicken coops in their backyard in the city. Well, when you go into the small town lifestyle, you can do that and so much more. So I think we'll see a lot more of that too.
Chicken coops, we'll
Don't get me started on chicken coops, Peter. I'm thinking about doing it myself. Who wouldn't want that?
No,
it's great for kids, by the way. Grace, I'm telling you, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law have chickens. They've been raising chickens, and their kids have responsibilities in the chicken coop. It's cool.
I can barely feed and walk my dog, so I don't think I'm going to be doing any chicken coop anytime soon. All right. Well, in conclusion, I just wanted to go around the horn really quickly and get your predictions on the rest of 2020 and, even into spring market 2021, if your crystal ball is that clear. So why don't we start with you, Thad?
I am incredibly bullish for real estate. I think that the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021 will be a very healing component for our country, focused around healing from the pandemic and healing from a lot of the division that's been injected into our country. And I think communities are going to become a focus in how we can become closer with one another within our community. And that's beautiful for our industry, thankfully. And it's also beautiful for the country. So I'm very much looking forward to how this year wraps up, and more looking forward to 21.
I think Thad and I are really very much on the same page. We both feel really positive about the direction that we're going in. Our industry has led the way coming out of recessions for years. And, we feel like we'll continue to lead the way. We're going to end the year 2020 strong. And we believe that we'll roll into 2021 with an equally strong spring market.
Yeah, and I agree. So I do think that the suburbs will remain strong. I think in 2021, the city is going to become the bright, shining light. I think there's such a human component to wanting to be together, be around other people. And after everything that we've been through in 2020, I think that the light and the bustlingness of the city will bring everyone back together, and we'll see that reflected in real estate.
Well, I certainly hope so.
If I can add one more thing, Peter, I just want to remember that even though it feels like we've been in this market because we've been isolated in COVID for a period of time, we're in inning 1 of the real estate consequences of COVID, which will be a greater focus on home ownership, and we will see appreciation. So I do believe that those people who bought in 2020 that were scurrying potentially with multiple offers to acquire their home, that might have felt that they paid too much, potentially, they didn't. This is going to be a baseline that we're creating, that we're going to see appreciation straightforward for the next decade.
Let's hope that things continue along this path, that we have a strong end of 2020 and a solid spring market. And I want to thank you guys for joining me, and we will, as always, see you next time at the market.